the liaison guy's getting whacked because, and he's got to get whacked because he's getting for the same reason that Jelly Belly's getting. You want to challenge the administration? You will meet the challenge.
Back in the 80s and 90s, something wild was happening in New York. The rap game and the mob world started overlapping in a crazy way. This whole vibe sparked what we now call mafioso rap, and it was all fueled by the massive hype around gangster flicks like The Godfather and Scarface. Those movies had the streets in a chokehold. Then in the mid-90s, Raekwon flipped the whole scene with a drop that shook the culture. His album, Only Built for Cuban Links, wasn't just music. It was like a movie on wax. Fans say it's the hardest mafioso rap album ever made, dripping with that cold, mafia-style energy that had everyone hooked.
Right.
If you want it down and acting like I'ma just be a drug dealer all my life, son. I got bigger and better plans, son.
No doubt, we gonna move on, son. Long as the love and the trust is...
The love and the trust is there, son. But what most folks don't realize is that album. It almost got Raekwon and his whole team caught up with some real-life mob figures. The streets were buzzing, and they had to be told to chill before things got serious. This wasn't just storytelling. It hit too close to home for some serious players. See, Ray and his crew were bred in a place where stepping up wasn't a question. It was instinct. If anything popped off, they weren't going to hesitate. They'd handle it, no problem. They were really about that life. And of course, all this heat traces back to the legendary Wu-Tang Clan. They hit the scene like dynamite. Started by the mastermind RZA, they kicked down the doors of the rap game when Protect Your Neck hit the airwaves in the early 90s. And nothing was the same after that. Wu-Tang wasn't just a rap group. They were a whole movement. These guys were dropping tracks like nobody else in the game, blending gritty street tales with wild production that pulled in influences from everywhere, even classic kung fu flicks. That mix of rawness and creativity made them stand out fast. And within just 4 days of meeting Steve Rifkin, they locked in a deal with Loud Records. That's how serious their impact was. What made them even more untouchable. Each member had their own voice, their own style. But when they got on a track together, it was magic. No stepping on toes, no clashing egos, just pure synergy every time they hit the booth. That explosive chemistry powered their debut album, Enter the Wu-Tang, 36 Chambers, and by 1993, it had exploded into a commercial smash. But Wu-Tang wasn't just about group fame, they had a whole strategy in play. Steve Rifkin worked out a genius move. Each member could go sign solo deals with different labels. That meant everyone could chase their own bag without slowing down the team's momentum. In the end, only Raekwon and Inspector Deck stuck with Loud Records. But that deal opened the floodgates.
College that summer of 94, 7, 8 months after the album caught a lot of heat. That month of August and early September, every dorm room at Mount Ida College was playing 36 Chambers.
Because of that setup, members were dropping solo heat left and right. RZA and GZA had already dropped solo joints even before Wu-Tang signed anything. But in November 1994, Method Man was the first to strike gold off the group's wave with his solo debut, Tikal. Then 1995 came in like a storm. Old Dirty Bastard, Raekwon, and GZA all dropped back-to-back albums. Raekwon's Only Built for Cuban Link dropped in August, sandwiched between ODB's return to the 36 Chambers in March and GZA's Liquid Swords in November. And guess what? All three would go on to be straight-up classics. Real ones still bump those to this day. Wu-Tang had already made a name for themselves with that wild, one-of-a-kind sound, full of Shaolin movie nods and gritty offbeat vibes.
Girl, wonder, shake ground like thunder. Politic to your deficit step, give me your number.
This record right here was the most slept on record at first to me, you know, because one thing about us, you know, when we was making music, we wasn't really catering to the female audience, you know. It was more like being in the heart of the jungle, you know, and playing with all the wild animals, you know. It wasn't never where we felt like this record had anything nice to say like that, you know. But then we knew that at the end of the day, as we listened to the album, we was like, yo, we got nothing up there for the women. So, you know, me at that point, I was, they just got, you know, no disrespect, you know, I love the women, but this ain't that kind of record, you know. But of course, we went back to the, you know, to the drawing board and really thought about it and said, you know what, we do need to have a women's record up there. And Ice Cream.
After 36 Chambers, both Method Man and Old Dirty Bastard kept riding that wave with their own successful solo drops, sticking to the Kung Fu-inspired image. So when it was Raekwon's turn, the pressure was on to follow suit. But Ray had other plans. He wanted to keep it real. Instead of leaning into fantasy, he set out to create something raw, something that truly reflected the life he lived growing up in the heart of Staten Island. No filters, no gimmicks. So when Ray dropped Only Built for Cuban Links, it hit different. This wasn't some martial arts dream. This was mafia life in stereo. His storytelling was deep, serious, and unapologetically street. It was a bold switch up from what Wu-Tang fans were used to, and it paid off big time. Instead of kung fu flicks, the album pulled heavy inspiration from mob movies and the real-life mafia, which had serious roots in Ray's hood. At first, Ray actually wanted to call the album Wu Gambinos, a direct shout to the powerful Gambino crime family running things in New York back then.
This right here, you know what I mean? I like that. I like the story. He come from where we come from. You know, after a while, we would build a relationship later on with him and become friends. And, you know, especially myself, me and him became mad close. Like, he came to Charlotte and come see me, pull in with the Lex and all of that. You know, I would come out to Queens, flow through, boom, I got the act on for Dolo. But that's just how I was, you know what I mean? I felt safe because I felt like he would get at the town love, you know what I mean? So I wasn't even thinking about nothing, but we became mad cool. And, you know what I mean? Like I told him, I said, yo, I need you on the album. He was like, no doubt. Came to the island, boom, we set up. We was in RZA crib, you know what I'm saying? Next thing you know, he just up in there.
But Steve Rifkin, whose own father had connections to that same family, had to shut it down real quick. He made a few phone calls and came back with a clear message. It ain't happening. Now, nearly 30 years later, fans agree that Only Built for Cuban Links was the perfect title. It's sharp, meaningful, and fits the album's vibe like a glove. And trust, Ray talking mob life wasn't for show. He was surrounded by that energy since he was a kid. It was real. One time, his own cousin reportedly took a man's life after the dude came at Ray wrong. That's the kind of world he came from. And that energy poured straight into the music. So yeah, now it makes total sense why Raekwon originally wanted to name the album Wu Gambinos. The vision behind it was real. But in the end, Only Built for Cuban Links hit harder and held way more meaning. On the 25th anniversary of the album, Ray even revealed that the title actually came straight out of one of their own lyrics. It wasn't random, it was destiny. This project stood out for a bunch of reasons, but one major key: Ghostface Killah was in it from the jump. Ghost showed up on 12 of the 18 tracks, nearly the whole thing. And just to show how locked in he was, Ray split his $500,000 advance right down the middle with Ghost. That's not just business, that's brotherhood. Ray and Ghost always called each other brothers, and they meant it. They grew up just 15 minutes apart in Staten Island, went to the same high school, and lived through the same struggles. Since the album was rooted in Ray's personal experience growing up in the hood, who better to help shape that story than someone who lived it too?
Ray got the purple tape itself.
Yeah, see all this right here, you know what I mean? This is why we doing this documentary, you know what I mean, called The Purple Tape Files. And then to see people, you know, having purple tape, you know, they made their own name for it, you know, because a lot of people didn't know Only Built for Cuban Links was that the name of the album. They just called it The Purple Tape. So, you know, a lot of people don't know that back in the days, you know, vinyl was big, but also the tapes was big though too. This was, you know, I don't even think CDs popping. Nah, CDs wasn't even.
It was I mean, I had the CD. Yeah. I remember I had like.
That's why these two took this album so seriously. They weren't just hanging out in the studio. They flew all the way to the Bahamas to lock in and write the whole thing. Shared a room, went back to that raw, old school grind. No distractions, just bars and vision. Usually the crew would record at RZA's basement studio, but Ray and Ghost wanted a new vibe for this one. Even still, RZA stayed deep in the mix, shaping the sound behind the scenes like he always did with the rest of the Wu-Tang solo projects. This one, it was a true team effort, with legacy written all over it.
We was making this album, we had to come with a mean title. And I think it was a rhyme that was said that we was writing, because we was doing a lot of writing together. You know, just reviewing our bars and just kind of like digging off each other. And at one time in the rhyme, it says something about only built for Cuban links who pull stings, sporting big pieces of ice carved in rings. So right there, it hit me. It was like, yo, only built for Cuban links. I'm like, yo, that sound like the biggest chain of all that can't be broken. It can't be broken, but it's the most gleamingest chain to come in the party with in front. And you know, when you see with those on, you know those ain't your everyday. Those is different. They will come knock on your door, you know. But the main thing was the shine and the lock that couldn't be broken.
Raekwon had to tap into a whole different zone for this one. He wanted a more grown, polished sound that showed growth, and he delivered big time. RZA had a master plan for the Wu-Tang Clan, a 5-year strategy where each member would lock in on different types of fans. Method Man was meant to connect with women and younger listeners. GZA, he was supposed to hit the intellectual crowd, the college heads. And Raekwon and Ghostface, they were the ones chosen to reel in the street kings, the gangsters. And yeah, Ray and Ghost definitely brought that gangster energy, but let's be real. None of the Wu members wanted to be trapped in a box. They all had their own vision, their own path. Raekwon especially had a deep love for mafia culture. His favorite movie?
That was basically just like making a Cuban links album. Like we shot away. We jumped on a plane. We went to Bahamas. We got one room. We doubled up. You know what I'm saying? We was just writing hard body. The ocean was behind us. And I remember us being up all night. Like we'd start rhyming like 12 o'clock in the afternoon. Like just listen to about 4 or 5 beats. But a lot of times we got busy like at night when it was like the ocean is looking black. You got the windows open, the breeze is coming in. We may take a little breather and listen to some old school
The Godfather, no question. During studio breaks, you'd catch him watching classics like Scarface. Those stories of loyalty, betrayal, and power hit home, and they eventually poured straight into his music. That influence runs deep on the album. The score from The Assassin was actually sampled on the very first track, Striving for Protection. You can hear it clear as day. That track opens the album with a cinematic bang, telling the story of 2 drug dealers planning one final high-stakes job before they disappear for good. Then came Knuckleheads, and this joint went crazy. Ray spins the tale of 2 hustlers pulling a heist and double-crossing their own crew. And who else jumps in on this track? U-God. And it made perfect sense. At the time, U-God was in and out of jail, and even he said he related heavy, calling himself a real knucklehead back then. His verse added raw truth to the whole track. Then came track 4, Criminology. This one was a monster. Released as a single before the album dropped, it lit the streets on fire. RZA himself said this was the track that put Ghostface Killah on the map. Ghost's verse was wild, and the beat, straight flames. Ray's still proud of that one. Says it captures who he is better than almost anything else on the album. Next up on the album came Incarcerated Scarfaces. And this one, that beat was crazy. It hit so hard that Raekwon decided to handle all 3 verses himself. No features, not even from Ghostface. This track was a full-on salute to his boys doing time behind bars. Ray kept it personal, raw, and all the way real. The title was a straight nod to the movie Scarface, and it wasn't the only time Ray paid tribute to the homies locked up. Matter of fact, the whole Wu-Tang Clan once performed at a prison, turning up inside with the inmates. That tells you just how connected they were to the streets and the struggle. Then came Rainy Days, one of the more emotional joints on the album, and it featured the haunting vocals of Blue Raspberry. She also appeared on another heater, Glaciers of Ice. But Rainy Days hit different. The vibe, the lyrics, everything felt like a scene out of real life. Raekwon actually wrote that track while chilling in Barbados. He told XXL magazine that during the making of the album, they dipped out the country, posted up by the ocean with a dope villa.
Right.
It's all good. What's up?
God, we gotta move, God. We gotta migrate. Get the New York, you know what I'm saying? Bounce, man. Start with bigger and better.
He said it was around 3 or 4 in the morning. Wind blowing, curtains swaying. pure inspiration mode. That's when Rainy Days came to life. Ray broke it down. The track was about the kind of girl from the block who's caught between loving a street dude and trying to pull him out the game. Not in a fake way, but how some women don't realize they're holding their man back when he's out grinding just to put food on the table. He said they wanted the song to reflect the struggle of those women who don't fully get it. The ones who say they care, but end up complicating things. And they even used a sample from a movie in the intro, with the girl saying, "I sing for him, and he isn't here. He ain't here because he making money." That line alone set the tone. It was deeper than just a song. It was a story. Next up on the album was Guillotine, Swords, and this joint, Straight Fire.
It was just a representation record of the block, you know, real MCs that just come out and really just know what they doing on the mic, you know. We made these 2 records though, definitely it was like fresh off the block, coming into the game with something to prove.
Yeah, it's like even to this day, it doesn't sound like anything out there. Those keys on there.
Yeah. It was definitely thumping though, you know. This is a representation record. You know, we was to go to another borough or whatever, and then, you know, it's a real battle of wits and intelligent artists and MCs that really...
It was the only track on the project that featured GZA, and he went off. But he wasn't alone. Inspector Deck also blacked out on his verse. Raekwon described the whole track as a symphony, where they spit bars about living that high-class, bossed-up lifestyle. And here's a fun fact. This album was the first rap record to ever name-drop Cristal Champagne, real trendsetter vibes. Then there's the Can It Be All So Simple remix, a heavy introspective joint. Ray and Ghost used this track to wrestle with the weight of leaving the streets behind. That pull between wanting to level up but still feeling tied to the block, that's what this song laid bare. It was raw, real, and relatable for anyone caught between 2 worlds. Track 10, Glaciers of Ice, was another standout. And not just for the beat. This was the official introduction of Capadonna. He was supposed to be on Wu-Tang's first album, but he was locked up when it dropped. So when he finally jumped on this project, it was a moment. Within the crew, Kappa had a rep for crushing MCs in battles. They knew he was a lyrical problem.
Scarface.
Oh yeah, well, you know, that record right there, that was straight for all the G's, you know, all the Dons that really live that life and, you know, been in situations where, you know, they might have felt like they was on the run or something or whatever the case may be. Like, that record spoke.
Now let's talk about track 16, Wu Gambinos. Even though Ray couldn't name the whole album that due to real-life mafia ties, he still made sure the title lived on in the music. And this track, legendary. It featured Master Killer, RZA, Method Man, and Ghostface Killer, and it deepened the mob theme Ray had been building from the start. Ray explained that the Wu Gambino aliases came from his obsession with the movie Once Upon a Time in America. The story of young street kids coming up from nothing, stuck between loyalty and survival. That energy hit close to home. The names? Tony Stark's came from Iron Man. Lou Diamond's came from Ray's love for iced out jewelry. Back then he was rocking so much ice it made sense. And since it was his solo project, Ray had one rule for this song. If you're gonna be on this track, you gotta have a mob-style AKA. That gave the whole thing a mafia crew feel. And it fit the vision perfectly. This right here was the Gambino track, Wu Gambinos. Ray broke it down. He started giving his crew mob-style nicknames inspired by the movie Once Upon a Time in America. He called Master Killer Noodles and gave GZA the name Maximilian, because in the film, Noodles and Max were close partners.
Mystery. Can It Be All So Simple was definitely a classic record. You know, me and Ghost, we relate to that lifestyle, you know, where the streets, it wasn't simple. You know, we wanted it to be simple, but it wasn't. And this record just basically take you back to that vibe of, you know, being on the block and having them dreams and them inspirations.
Ray saw GZA the same way. A deep thinker, the brains of the operation. He'd say something real smart, Ray said, and I looked at him like a Max. Inspector Deck got dubbed Raleigh Fingers because of the slick way he rolled blunts. The nickname started flowing naturally. U-God became Golden Arms, and everyone started making up their own aliases. RZA, he was Bobby Steels, on some militant Black Panther meets DJ Mastermind energy. It was a whole vibe. like a lyrical crime syndicate. That leads us straight into what might be the most iconic joint on the whole album, Ice Cream. This track featured Ghostface, Method Man, and Capadonna, and it was crazy catchy. Even though Ray wasn't feeling the idea at first, he wasn't trying to do a song for the ladies, he went with it, and it worked. The hook was smooth, the verses were fire, and the beat was unforgettable. It gave the album a whole different flavor. But we have to talk about Verbal Intercourse. This one was special, the only outside feature on the album, and it came from none other than Nas. At the time, Ray and Nas were tight. They'd pull up to each other's hoods and chill for real. So when they finally got in the booth together, the result was magic. Ray and Nas had mutual respect, and their chemistry on this track was next level. And one last detail that helped lock this album in is legendary, the purple tape. When Ray dropped the album, he pressed it on a bold purple cassette, and that wasn't just for style. That move was inspired by the streets. Just like dealers would mark their product to make it stand out, Ray made sure his tape popped off the shelf. It worked so well that fans still call it the purple tape to this day, more than they even say Cuban links. Icon status. Sealed. This album wasn't just a classic, it was a blueprint. Raekwon didn't just drop one of the coldest rap records of all time, he straight up launched a whole new lane in hip-hop. Only built 4 Cuban links and gave birth to mafioso rap, a style that brought big screen mafia drama into the gritty world of street storytelling. Ray pulled off something legendary, mixing flashy movie samples with RZA's genius production, while keeping the rhymes raw, personal, and real. This wasn't just music, it was cinema through the speakers. And with this project, not only did Ray level up his own name, but he pushed the whole Wu-Tang legacy even further. This album made sure his name stays stamped in hip-hop's Hall of Fame, no question. And speaking of Wu-Tang, look around. Staten Island is still showing love. It's in the air, for real. Wild coincidence, right? Or maybe it's just that Wu energy never left. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. We've got more heat on the way. Share this with your crew, and we'll catch you in the next one.